recognize the distinguished ranking member for his opening statement. Mr. Cummings.
Chairman, the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform is supposed to enhance transparency and shine light on waste, fraud, and abuse. I've been a member of this committee for 15 years, and I never thought I would see the day when our committee would view transparency as the enemy. The draft executive order being developed by the administration would require federal contractors to disclose more information about their political contributions than they currently provide, particularly those given to a third-party entity. Chairman Issa said this week that he opposes this effort because additional information could be used nefariously to create, and I quote, a Nixonian-type enemies list, end of quote. In other words, companies should not disclose more information because people in power could misuse the information to retaliate against them. I have a fundamental problem with this premise. Under this logic, all campaign disclosures would be bad, not just new ones. Government contractors already disclose contributions and expenditures by their PACs and those who contribute to them. Contributions by the officers and directors of government contractors are also required to be disclosed. Should we eliminate those provisions too? Of course not. A second argument made by the opponents is that contracting officers might review political contributions in order to reward allies or punish foes by awarding or withholding government contracts. Again, this could happen now under current law, under current disclosure rules, but federal procurement law prohibits it. The draft executive order also reiterates that, and I quote, every stage of the contracting process, end of quote, must be free from the undue influence of factors extraneous to the underlying merits of contracting decision-making, such as political activity or political favoritism. A third argument that the draft executive order violates the First Amendment is also misplaced. Even in the recent Citizens United case, 8 of 9 justices agreed that campaign disclosure rules are consistent with the First Amendment because they do not prohibit contributions and do not prevent anyone from speaking. For all of these reasons, a broad coalition of dozens of open government groups and other organizations strongly supports the administration's draft executive order. More than 30 groups, including nonpartisan nonprofit organizations like Democracy 21, the Project on Government Oversight, Public Citizen, and many others, have concluded that the draft executive order would enhance transparency and decrease corruption. Unfortunately, we will not be hearing from these groups today because Chairman Issa refused my request to invite Fred Wertheimer, the president of Democracy 21, to testify on behalf of this coalition. Although I was encouraged when Chairman Graves agreed to the request from his ranking member, Ms. Velasquez, to invite a small business owner to today's joint hearing, Chairman Issa chose not to follow this example. These are not the only groups that support the draft executive order. On Tuesday, a coalition of institutional investors and investor coalitions, collectively managing more than $130 billion, also wrote to express their support. In their letter, they explained that corporate political activity presents significant risks to shareholder value, and transparency allows investors to put together a more complete picture of the various risks to our investments. For these reasons, I ask unanimous consent to place the following documents into the official record of today's hearing. First, I'd like to submit the testimony of Mr. Wertheimer, prepared for today's hearing but was not allowed to deliver. Second, I would like to submit a letter written on May 4th by more than 30 open government organizations and others expressing their, and I quote, strong support, unquote, for the executive order and its transparency goals. And third, I would like to submit a letter written on May 10th from the coalition of institutional investors who support the draft executive order to protect the interests of corporate shareholders. And I would ask that they be admitted into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much. And